Goes on and on and on. But the leader of those in your campaign was Avital. And I contend that you are who you are because of who you are. But we came to know you, Natan, in a way we did not know any other prisoner of Zion. We came to know you through Avital. And I consider those days, tagging along with Avital, to be really days of Kedusha. So I want to just spend just 2 minutes telling you about the greatness of Avital, whom I consider the latter part of the 20th century. She was, and still is, a person of such humble strength, the epitome of the Gemara, B'makom gedula yesh anava, where there is greatness, there is humility. She was soft-spoken, very, very quiet. She was spiritual. I know when in front of a crowd at a rally, it's rah-rah. Avital used to speak spiritually, in the spirit of Rav Kook. Spoke about your phrase, Natan, the unity of souls. When you said, maybe for myself, I can admit I made a mistake. But how can I do so? I would be betraying my responsibility to Am Yisrael. She spoke about the cleanness of words, the horror that the Soviets are not true to their words. She used to speak about how you are in the bottle. If the cork will come out, everyone will be free. And she used to say to everyone, your message, Rachel, your email, kenos et kol haYehudim. Go gather all the Jews, and if you gather all the Jews, Natan will be freed. And on his wings, and indeed just a few years later, the doors really opened. I had the zechut to see this with my own eyes. Once at an airport in Toronto, there was a young woman carrying a little child, and she ran up to Avital, first asking permission. And Avital is the most approachable person. And she said, crying, she said, Avital, I want to introduce you to my daughter. Her name is Avital. I named her in your honor. And if there are women here between the age of 35 and 45, and your name is Avital, odds are you were named because of who Avital Sharansky was. So this is an evening to celebrate Natan, who I look up to as the hero of heroes. But it's an evening to celebrate the power of a woman with this spiritual, soft voice who spoke volumes, through whom we came to know for the first time this person on my left of such greatness.
About Avital, you can speak additional 2 minutes.
Rav Avi, actually, to everybody here whose kids have learned about Natan's story over the last 2 weeks, and I was in the ELC teaching parsha, or learning parsha from the kids on Friday, and I said, can you tell me what a hero is? And they started telling me, yeah, Natan Sharansky's coming to school on Monday. And then one kid raises his hand and says, he's the guy who zigzagged across the bridge when he was getting freed. But I want to tell you that 1,800 kids and 400 faculty members focused meaningfully on this story this month is because you spoke to all of our students in the high school, in the academy. You literally, they came out of that session inspired by you, inspired by who you are, inspired by the things that you did, and really, really inspired to make sure that story. And I walked around the entire building and everybody knew what was going on, and this is not something, we have teachers who were born after 1986. We have a lot of teachers who were born after 1986. So we really think...
I just want to say something about
SAR.
First of all, there are so many people from this community who contributed to the Soviet Jewry movement, whose names should be known. They are known, but they gave so humbly, no one really knows about that contribution. One is the longtime president, Ben Time, without whom there would never have been the first large gathering in Madison Square Garden, which he guaranteed as only he could, and Ludi Jesselson. Do you remember the story? I'm sure Avital told you. No, very well. You know the story. When Avital came to Ludi for help, there was some kind of plan, some exchange, and Ludi said, of blessed memory, I don't think it'll work. I can't give you the money. And Avital walked out crying, and Mr. J ran after her and said, can't take it. And he gave her a very significant sum of money. And a few weeks later, Avital was asking some of us, said, you know, Ludi was right, and I didn't spend all the money. Do I have to give back the money that I didn't spend? And she went to Ludi, said, once I've given it to you, I don't take back. These are the heroes. And we know the heroes only of the West in New York, all over the country and all over the world. And SAR, permit me, this school is so unique in its education. I said to my dear Jack, did you ever think of a school, of a college going beyond SAR? Or minimally, let me be the first one to suggest.
You heard it here first. Okay.
Let me suggest a Tochnit Yud Gimel. In Israel after high school, that's a Tochnit SAR Yud Gimel. So great is this institution. Yourself, Bini, Rabbi Hartstock.
Natan, I don't know if you remember this, but sometime in the middle of early in March 20, you spoke to our community via Zoom. The reason was because on March 2nd, 2020, our school was closed for COVID, and at the time, the thought was that there's a virus going around SAR, and everyone felt really bad for us. And I mean, and literally, Rabbi Josh Lookstein said, "Oh, you know, you guys are really, you look terrible. Maybe I could ask Natan Sharansky to speak to you via Zoom." And what you did was you actually gave people tips about how to solitary confinement, where you could order pizza. But you did that, and you talked about how to live under pressure and in isolation, and maybe you could show in terms of the challenges that we have and the challenges that we can learn from.
One thing was, then I was really trying to explain how I'm, while alone, closed at home. I don't think it's the situation today, but going back then to that wisdom. By the way, from that conversation you're talking about, I was asked to make a clip, and then this clip was going all over the world. People were saying how it helped them survive COVID. But in fact, the things which I was saying is, first of all, don't put aim which don't depend on you. Feel responsibility for things which depend on you. For example, in my case, whether survive physically doesn't depend on me. So don't decide that is your task to survive physically, because then you are in the hands of KGB. Your task has to be a free person until the end of your life. So the same here. Don't put, oh, in a year from now, COVID will be finished, we'll go. You don't know when it will be finished. So don't make these plans. But in 2 months, I will learn another language. That's up to you. That's what I can. And so and the number of such advice that I gave, I can say in our situation, well, my daughter was writing about it many times, in this complicated, such a polarization in America, in Israel, well, with hostages, what we had. I was proud of my daughter. She was initiator of some of the demonstrations of people of different, but united with the desire to pray for hostages. So we have to think what we can do in the next 2 weeks to make the situation better. not to think how we can overcome, how we'll agree on one thing. We will not agree on one thing. There are so many very principal problems who stand between us. But what a step we can do together, that's something what depends on us, and we have to think about it. And I have to say, in the prison, it helped a lot, to the hostages. If you think not about how you'll run away from the prison. It's impossible to run away from it. But how you will remain free from the prison. And what else you can do to strengthen this freedom. That's why when I was already on my way to freedom, they said to me, agreed straight. I said, agreed? Of course not. And why? It's keeping your free person until the last moment in prison. That's very important. If I answered your question, because your question was so general.
I'm curious, Rabbi Weiss spoke about the remarkable work that your wife did for the years that you were in prison. This is, if you can share with us what it was like that snowy day when you were released and you were reunited with Avital. What's some memories, something you can share with us so we could feel like we were part of that experience? And I also want to turn the question as well on this personal moment. Oh, there's some, yeah, there are a lot of photos up there. You could, I want to share, I'm curious from Rachel as well. You know, you are a mother, you have children who you want to impart some of these lessons from your parents. You are the daughter of Natan and Avital Sharansky. Your children are the grandchildren. I'm curious, personally, that plays a role in how you educate your own children. So first Natan, then Rachel.
Okay, I'll leave more time to Rachel, and I'll say simply that I saw many times in the dreams in Pansha how I meet Avital, how I'm released. So many times. It was like a film. So when you are not sleeping, you cannot permit yourself to be weakened. You have to be mobilized. So you don't have all these dreams. The moment you sleep, you see these sweet dreams. In the end, when I met her, it was much more dramatic than any film. By far more dramatic. I was taken straight from the KGB prison, brought to the big empty airplane, only me and 4 KGB guys. By sun, we see that we go to the west, then we land in Germany, then the American embassy takes me through the bridge to western Germany, then Israeli airplane with Avital takes us to Israel. There, our prime minister, all of us, we go to the Kotel and celebrate. So it's straight to the paradise. So I really was afraid that it's a dream, and that I'll wake up. So I kept Avital all the days, another day and another day, and I was not sleeping for a few days. I think I was afraid that to wake up, to go back there. So that in terms of emotionally. As to practically, look, as Avital told, it's not my phrase, when I took to the airport from Moscow, next day after our chuppah, it was early in the morning, like 6 in the morning. When we came back, 12 years after, it was evening. She said, for me, it's like one very, very long day. And that's exactly how we felt. And again, many people, when they are suddenly released after all, it's like falling, because you are mobilized, you are tense, and suddenly you're relaxed. We didn't have time to relax. We continued to struggle. There were people refused in prisons of war, conscience, and in exile, and killed millions of Jews. So we continued fighting. We became busy with the family. And so we continue fighting until this day. It's a very easy life.
In other words, try not to ever relax. And answer your question, it's funny, you know, the way my parents told us the story was never as a story. You know, they never sat us down and said, let us do a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It was always in conversation. And every year, our family, even though we live in Israel, has 2 seders, though they're not consecutive. We have the normal Leila Seder in Pesach, And 6 weeks earlier, on the day my father was released from prison, we have a family, we call it that, where we celebrate and feel our gratitude for my father's liberation. And in that Seder, which we held since I can remember myself, presumably before I can remember myself, my sister and I, we asked questions, and my parents answer, and the questions change, When I was little, the question was, were there animals in prison? Then is, what did you eat in prison? Then when we were romantic teenagers with dreams, we're like, what was it like to meet her? What was it like to be apart? When we were a little older, what was it like to rebuild together after 12 years of separation? That seemed very awe-striking all of a sudden as an adult. So when my kids were born, the time my own kids were born, this story has seeped into me. It's become so much part of me that when I, meet challenges in my life or cross of decision, I don't think, there is that story, maybe I can draw a parallel and learn something from it. It's just instinctive. It's just part of my internal geography. And I was really excited to bequeath it to my kids. But I made a mistake because I forgot how my parents told me the story. And instead, I set my down as soon as they were old enough to understand. And I poured everything I know about storytelling into the way I told it to them. I made the stakes clear. I showed moments of conflict. I made sure there was rising action and falling actions. I told them the whole story, and I would finish it and say, and then they arrived to Israel, and he sang, Hine matovu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. And my kids, thrilled, would clap and say, now tell us the story of Snow White. And I was very frustrated, and I tried again and again. And after a while, I understood the problem. I understood that I'm trying to control what they take from the story. I'm trying to shape the story for them. The way my parents told us the story, and the way we tell the story of the Exodus every year around the Seder table, or the two Seders here, is very different. We liberate the story. We let the kids ask their questions that come from their heart, even if the question ends up being, were there animals at the time, for example. But then what they take from the story is up to them. So I think what I learned when it came my turn to turn the story, even though my parents, Baruch Hashem, do it as well on the Seder every year, it's that when it comes to the things that make us who we are, the stories that are really fundamental for us and foundational for our identity, we have to let the story go. We have to allow the next generation to take what they need and what serves them best.
Thank you, Rachel. We have a lot of them again, and we'll try to figure this out, Rabbi Kroll, how to get to at least some of them. Rav Avi, you called me the New Year's Eve at about 9:30 at night, and I knew what was about to happen. Because it was really cold outside, and you said, Benny, mayoral inauguration, and I think it's important for people in New York. I don't think you called it a protest. For people in New York to stand outside City Hall and declare that we love the state of Israel. The state of Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. You asked me to join you there. And again, I felt I have tremendous respect for you, and I thought what you were saying was right, even though I knew how cold it was. You outlasted me. Nevertheless, you were there for I was there for about 45 minutes. You were there for about 2.5 hours. How do you find the strength to do that? And what do you think our generation, the kids that are growing up in this school, all of us, need to be doing? How are we doing?
The respect is very, very mutual, Vinny. I feel so blessed that our relationship is so close, and with your Abba and Ima. You know, many of the activists were asking, after communism fell and Jews started coming out, will there ever be such a movement, such a unity? And I saw it these past 2 years. It's counterintuitive. Have been dark years. I look up to God, I say, even if I don't ask why, I do ask, Ad matai? How many more painstaking shivers and injuries But in the same breath, it's like the seed that plants a tree on Tu B'Shvat starting tonight. And when the tree is in the ground, the tree says, oh my goodness, I feel so much pressure, so much darkness. And the ground says, Al tidhag, al tityaesh, from me will sprout. And that's what we saw these past 2 years. And it was, in its own way, a microcosm of the Soviet Jewry movement. We marched then, and young people were marching now. Pictures of Natan and others in synagogues, pictures of hostages everywhere. There was something that was beautiful that was occurring. We wore bracelets then. People were wearing hostage necklaces around their neck. And as much as these past 2 years have been so difficult, me'achoshech yatsa or. The Torah says that God's first words and the headquarters of the meaning of a word is the first time it's mentioned. The Torah says, V'choshech al pnei tehom. There was darkness October 7th. Vayome Elokim yehi or. And being in Israel then, everyone joined Tzava. Everyone was in Tzahal. Some in the green fatigue uniforms. Others doing whatever they can, whatever they could. My Toby, my Tovali, doing what she could. Everyone trying to do whatever they could. And people tried to do their share. I have so much kavod every time I walk through Israel and I see a chayal. I hear that he's a graduate of SAR. I'm especially flying. It's something to be very proud of. With all of the challenges that we face now, I am very optimistic. I am optimistic. What we need is to produce leaders who can inspire our generation to stand up and to show up as they have, and to continue doing so into the
I guess, Natan, I'll ask you to answer it, but then ask any of our panelists to weigh in. You fought for years to reach Israel, to build your life there. Rabbi Weiss, you spent your life advocating from the diaspora, building Jewish strength and identity here. You grew up in Israel as part of that realized dream. Our families and students represented here tonight, and we're so proud of the over 65 SAR alumni who have served in this war, not Israel. Our families represented here are living Jewish lives outside of Israel. We're wrestling with questions of where we belong and how to build meaningful Jewish futures. In 2026, in light of everything that we've experienced these past years, about the question of where Jewish life should ideally be lived, in Israel and the diaspora, or is this question itself something that misses the point?
Well, personally, I think that the best place for a Jew to enjoy both freedom and full Jewish life is Israel. That's my opinion. But as the one who worked practically all my life between Jewish communities of the world and Israel, how to strengthen this connection, I know that every Jew makes decision on his own, on her own, and I never want and don't want to be commissar of Zionism, meaning saying everybody, why are you still here, why you don't go to Israel. So I was demanded sometimes by our government to say it. I never say it because I don't believe that that is the way to make Aliyah. People are doing this Aliyah because of making this decision because of very many reasons, personal and not personal. But What I do know, I experienced in all the communities in the world, and I think I was in all the communities in the world, that we are disappearing, shrinking, except from Israel, of course. We are shrinking as a people. Assimilation is very strong. And there are only two balamim, two breaks. The AIDS, things that stop it. AIDS, faith, and Zionism. If you have both, okay. If you have one of them, you can work with this. If you don't have both, your grandchildren will not be Jewish. It's like law of nature. So whatever is your decision, where you want to enjoy the life of free person belonging to your people, to your history, so the connection, very strong connection with Israel is necessary. And I'm saying it because I heard from a number of rabbis, mainly Reformed rabbis, but a number of public figures, community organizers, that the time has come for us, America, to build our identity without Israel. That, as one told me very beautiful, she said, for 2,000 years, Jewish people were building the identity without Israel. The time has come to do it again, because Israel brings a lot of disagreement inside our community. And I can say that a Jewish identity without Israel is like a few hundred years ago to try to build your Jewishness without Jewish community. Why do I need Jewish community? It takes me back. I want to be successful in the court, whatever. I'll build my Jewish identity without Jewish community. That's more or less what saying those who are trying today to build their identity without strong connection with the core of Jewish identity, Israel. So wherever you live, strengthen your connection with Israel, but that's what your school is doing anyway, so we have to talk to those who are not doing it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
There is so much that our respective Jewish worlds can learn from each other. It took me time to understand how fortunate we are as Jews to live in America. And there are people in this audience who help me understand the mitzvah of hakarat hatov. But once coming to an understanding of appreciating the greatness of America, in the same breath, if somebody were to ask me today, what is the future for Jews in America? I am no longer sure. I'm no longer sure. When I think about, jumping to something else, the different education formulae of both communities, something we spoke about at Jackie and Gitti's table. I think Gitti made this point. When one thinks about education right here, a high school student at SAR, understandably, you can't get a better education than at SAR. But in your sophomore and junior and senior year, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about which tochnit, what year, how am I going to spend my year in Israel? You're thinking about which college. The high school is blessed with one of the best college placements, people, Michael Courtney, just unbelievable. That's the thinking. The thinking is, frankly, how can I be served? In Israel, it's different. Our grandchildren, the children of Ilana and Michael and Dina and Mark are here and so on, but their children, they went to SAR. Ilana went, Dina went, but Ilana's children, it's an army family. I'm wearing their diskits. One is in Gaza, one is now in training, and she's got a third one in active reserves in Efrat. When the women meet each other and they ask, how many do you have? What they're talking about is how many do you have serving? And when I listen to these kids in their junior and senior year, what are they talking about? How can I serve? How can I give? Which pre-military school am I going to go to? Am I going to go to this mechina talking about Eli Sadan, his creation, this yeshiva? It's a whole different thinking. Our grandchildren in Israel didn't start college till they were 23, 24. And I'm no longer sure that the American way is the better way. If I could, I would have an edict in this country that when you finish high school, you're obligated to serve. I'm not even talking about the military. Serve, give to Shevet Leumi. And this is the education in Israel. Friends, Israel's a remarkable country. With all the criticism we hear, it's a remarkable country. And I'm not embarrassed to say I'm in love with every part of Israel. It is something and a country we should be so proud about, and we should be worried that now there's a mayor of the city of New York, the city that boasts of the largest Jewish population of any city in the diaspora, who is an anti-Zionist, who fails Natan's 3Ds test, where anti-Israelism crosses into anti-Semitism. He fails the test, Mamdani does, of not agreeing that we should have a Jewish state, of demonizing Israel, of the double standard for Israel. We're living in a community where our congressman, Richard Torres, who could be the strongest supporter of Israel ever to be in Congress, where he is in a tough election fight because his opponents are running on the platform that you, Richie, you are supporting a country, Israel, that is a genocidal country. That's something we should be aware of and something we should be talking about very maturely about. Ashrei ha'am, join me in this prayer, sheyesh lo medina k'medinat Yisrael, ashrei ha'am sheyesh lo tzava k'tzava, b'ashrei ha'am sheyesh lo giborim, k'chaveh ha'yakar shelanu, Natan Sharansky.
Like my father, I'm not going to say, this is the right way to live, that is the right way to live. Obviously, I choose to live in as I choose for myself. But I want to speak to something else for a second, and I want to say that we have so much to learn from each other. You know, in Tanakh, right, Moshe Rabbeinu spends most of Sefer the danger of becoming so used to success that we forget who we are. Other prophets, talking to the Jews of the diaspora, warn them about losing their identity, warn them about losing who they are. In other words, different prophets talk to different types of groups. And the kind of pathologies that we face in Israel, where we are the majority culture, which comes with tremendous responsibility to shape the state in the image of our deepest values, but also with the danger of falling into the trap Moshe Rabbeinu warns us against. This pathology is a real danger for us. Here are facing your own challenges that stem from being a minority culture surrounded by a very, tempting, beautiful, rich culture. Other Jews living in other places deal with living under persecution. Last year I met the Jews of Ukraine. They're dealing with their own challenges. We deal with different challenges and we come up with different solutions. And we only have to gain if we understand better, if we listen to each other, understand each other's challenges, not with this idea that we have the tools to solve your problems or you have the tools to solve our problems, but as a way to inure ourselves against narrowing our understanding of what Judaism is, what it can be, what kind of way of life it can shape, and thus enriching our own understanding of how to solve our own problems, each of us where we are. And I think it's a shame that we sometimes shortchange ourselves by being so busy talking at each other and explaining why we are better or why our way is better. And I really hope that, I wish for us, like what I'm me'achelet to Am Yisrael, is listening.
Beautiful. I'm going to read one of the questions we received. Somebody who scanned in. This question for Natan. Are there any decisions you regret about what ultimately landed you in prison? You can't change the past. In retrospect, would you have chosen anything differently, and why?
No, I enjoy it. I really don't want to change anything. Look, people believe really that this years in prison is like black spot that you'd like to forget. No, it's the years when you were mobilized every minute of your life. You couldn't let yourself to be demobilized for 1 second, and it energizes then you all your life. You know, I was 9 years in prison, 9 years in Israeli government, 9 years in the Jewish agency. But now, when we old people have dreams, we are sleeping and we are seeing, and our dreams take us back to meaningful. I have to say thank you, though, frankly, that I never see in my dreams any government meeting. And I had many of them. Or board of Jewish agency, such passionate discussion. I don't see it in my dream. But interrogations, punish and sell, I see all the time, and I enjoy it because I wake up and I feel that we defeated them. So this feeling of defeat, then it helps you to go even through the headache of government meetings, you understand? So no, of course, everybody before going to prison should marry the way I married and learn to play chess in your head. So I'm happy I had all this, and I don't change anything.
We got very many questions, and unfortunately not very much time for them. Summer of 1991, we ran a Jewish summer camp outside of Minsk, actually in Radin. And one of the campers there was a remarkable young girl named Luba Kozlova. And we stayed connected with her over the years, and then a few years ago she became a parent at SAR High School. And she sent in this question for Natan. As someone who grew up in the Soviet Union, I would love to understand how you knew about the larger Jewish community outside and know that there was an alternative to the non-Jewish life that we had, given how closed the FSU society was then. How did you learn about the larger Jewish community? What did you learn about the larger Jewish community?
Well, you know, if before I applied for Israel, somebody will tell me, okay, and take into account that you'll spend years at the refugee and then 9 years in prison, and you'll be sentenced to be threatened to be sentenced to death and so on. Not sure I would start, because nobody begins jumping into the death without knowing being ready for this. But I was lucky that after I applied for visa and got a refusal and lived for a few years as an activist and movement becoming like a spokesman of our movement, I got to know many Jewish activists who were coming as tourists from the United States, from England, from France, from Australia, but a lot from Philadelphia, from Miami, from San Francisco, of course from New York. I met with Rav Luckstein. I met practically with most of the activists representing different Jewish organizations: Student Struggle for Soviet Jewry, Council for Soviet Jewry, Conference for Soviet Jewry, 35. So I knew, first of all, how different are these groups, how Jewish people never agree on anything, and at the same time, how all these people who disagree, how devoted are to our struggle. And that was the feeling with which I went to prison. So it was much easier for me to face all the threats to be sentenced to death when you know that you are representing all these people. All these people are on one list of your accomplices. Are your accomplices. And that's what makes you strong and confident. It doesn't matter what they're saying in your head. You have different world. World of Jews fighting for your release. And when I was released, of course, the real world was like in my head, the real Jewish world, and not like what KGB was saying. So, yes, when you are ordinary Soviet, loyal Soviet citizen, you are alone. You're absolutely alone because all your Jewishness means that you must be the best in your class, and that's why I succeed in spite of anti-Semitism. When you're part of the struggle, you discover that not only you are not alone, but you are part of the most powerful movement which changes the history. And that's what gives you a lot of strength.
On behalf of everybody in this sold-out room, I want to thank the remarkable people who are on this stage for the last hour of a really riveting conversation. I want to remind you that the program has not yet begun, and we're going to just hang out for 30 minutes. You could go out, come back in, and we will start at 6:30. There might be a minion for Mariv over here in the corner. What an honor to have you all here. Thank you very, very, very much.
Supposed to be. I'm perfect just the way you made me. As hard as it seems to live in two worlds, I could be at peace and still look for more. That's the life you gave me. The first step is admitting that I'm not where I wanna be yet. And as much as that hurts, I'm reminded I'm human. I know that